Okay, so we're gonna service the transmission on this 16 Escape. Drain plug is on 11 millimeter, and then right back here in the corner is an H10. I believe it's an H10. Let me see when I spin the socket. And what I do is I run a long extension out that way, and I keep it above the sway bar. And I have a long 3/8 ratchet right here. I got an HW 3/8 or an HW10. I think a HW10 would fit better. Either one will work. It's basically an Allen head. I'll pull it out so you can see. And when you crack these loose, they pop. They're not quiet, they pop. So it's gonna almost sound like you broke something, but you didn't. That's just how they crack loose. It's just an old junk socket that I use for these situations. So I'll pull my pan back up out of the way. Go ahead and finish pulling my fill plug out of here. And you know, the sad thing is they say that's normal. I've never seen fluid like that normal, but these newer transmissions from these manufacturers, they look like this. They don't stay red. They almost automatically, because they're internally filtered where you can't change the filter, it's just a drain and fill, and they end up looking like this for the life of the transmission. It's pretty sad, but that's just how it is. When you're doing a drain and fill on these 6F35s, the only real way to actually flush this thing out is it's like right at 4 quarts, 4.2 quarts of fluid to go back in here. It's Mercon LV, and basically you have to run like 4 quarts through it, run it, get it all nice and rolling for about 15 minutes, drop it again, and then refill it again if you want to get all the black out of it. But sometimes it takes up to 3 times. Sometimes at the 3rd time, if you don't see anything changing, it ain't gonna change. Yeah, it's pretty dark. But that's these new transmissions now, man. They don't look red. I mean, the F-150s, they end up looking red pretty long. I mean, the F-150s can go a long time. But I still tell people all the time, between 30 and 40,000 miles is when you should be flushing your trans. Don't ever let it go to the point where you're letting the manufacturer tell you it's 150,000 miles or 100,000 miles. That's hogwash. I don't care how good the oil is with any manufacturer. That's hogwash. Take care of it now before it becomes a problem. And I notice a lot of people go by what the manufacturer's recommendation. They're out of warranty. It's not the manufacturer's problem anymore. And then guess what happens? They're buying a trans, or they're rebuilding one. So our trans guy, he's over there, and I talk to him all the time about these transmissions. And he said, you know, they're not problematic transmissions. They are kind of jerky and bucky at times, but really, it's people don't change the fluid enough because they listen to what the manufacturer is saying. And I know that's not the right thing to say, and that's all manufacturers. That's just not one. Most manufacturers want people to feel like they don't have to service their vehicle enough or as much. So basically, the vehicle in the long run costs them less money, and then they want to go buy the vehicle. Little do they know that it's rubbish. Most of us do have a severe schedule driving wise, so all our OTIs should be very, very short. So basically same thing here. We'll let this drain completely, and through that side plug right there, we'll get our fluid extractor and our fluid hand pump. We'll pull the top off. We'll pour about a half a quart in there. We'll fill it up, pour about a half quart in there, fill it up, and we'll keep doing it until it starts running out. And then once it starts running out, we'll let it stabilize and go back into the housing and stop running out, and that's how we know we're full. Then we'll start the vehicle and let it run. And as it's running, after it runs for a little bit, we'll actually pull the plug. I'm pretty sure it's while it's running. It's been a while since I've done one. We'll pull the plug and we'll make sure that it's full right at the level spot of the eyelid right here on the side. So we'll let it drip for a little bit, and then I'll get this plug put back in, and then I'll fill it up, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's full. And again, this is what I'm using, this flexible tube to fill it up. And just like, if you haven't seen my PTU video I just did on how to service the PTU, you need to go look at that video, because I show you actually how to take this apart. I'll actually put it in the comment section so you guys can find it. So basically right here what I do is I have the Rosebud installed into the fill hole or the check hole, and I'm actually going to show you. I'm trying to do this with one hand, but I start actually pumping the fluid in here right now. I think I set this down on like the tie rod assembly just so I can record, and then I start trying to push the fluid through. I think at this point I'm still using one hand, but I have to resettle here in a second. So there, I'm just trying to go nice and slow, just to let it nice and easy seep down there. I'm right at almost 4 quarts right here. I'm about a half quart or less away. This camera's trying to adjust, and it's not being able to because it's actually touching the piece of metal behind it, so it thinks somebody's touching the screen. I'm trying to get it adjusted. I apologize. There we go, just nice and slow until it starts to run out. I'm at about 3.6, 3.7 quarts right here, and just as I get closer and closer to 3.8, 3.9, close to 4 quarts, you can see it actually starts to back up and start to drain out of the hole. Still going real nice. I'm trying to slow down. There it is. It starts to back out. I just go ahead and push the rest of what's in the gun or in the Rosebud in there, and then I let it settle on its own, hoping that I push any kind of loose old stuff that's floated to the top out. So this is right at 4 quarts is what I put in, and then I let it drain back, so it actually ends up being about 3.8, 3.9 quarts. And then I just pull it out, let it continue draining. You see right there, it's level, a little bit above level with the fill hole, and just let it finish draining until it stops draining and it's right at the threads. I say fill hole, but it's really a check hole. You're supposed to fill from the top through the vent, but it makes a mess. There's no real reason to do that. Right here is easier, and you can get the same result with it. They actually want you to put the drain plug back in, go back up to the top of the car with this plug in the side out, fill through the vent hole until it starts pouring out, but it ends up coming up to the same amount anyway, so I just fill right here. The trans guy, he does the same thing. There's no reason to go through the vent hole. It just makes a mess. You got to take more stuff off that's not necessary. And as long as you let it sit here and stabilize and kind of level out throughout the trans, and you still see the fluid, that's all that matters. Then you start the car up, you run it for a little bit, let it get a little warm, and then recheck this hole again and make sure that it's level with it. If not, add a little bit more to it until it's level. I'm going to leave some afterthoughts here, but just kind of share with you guys. I think this plug here is somewhere around, it's like 28 to 30 foot-pounds, and then the one underneath is something super light. It's like 20 to 25 inch-pounds. I just snug up the bottom one because it's really light. There's no reason to pull out a torque wrench to just snug the thing up. It's a little tiny plug. And then this one here, I've done so many of these, I pretty much got a feel for it. I run it in until it gets snug, and then I'll pull on it just a tad bit, because it does have an O-ring that seals and you don't want to over tighten it, and then that's it. Then I'm done. There's no reason to go any further. So here I'm just using my H10, trying to run I ran it, started the vehicle. It's still, even after I run it, it was still level with the hole. So now I'm just tightening my plug back up because there's no reason for me to put it anymore. It stayed full, and it was right at about 3.9, 4 quarts somewhere in there that I ended up putting in. What Ford has you do in this particular situation is they want you underneath the airbox up top to pull the rubber cap. There's a pre-tension clamp. Pull it off and fill it from there. There's no reason to do it that way. You can fill the 6F35 transmission from the actual fill port, start the vehicle back up, run it, let it get warm, let it cycle the fluid, and then pull that plug back out and make sure it's full. If you got to put some more in there and it's not level with the hole, then it's not level with the hole. Most of the time, it's right at about 3.8 to 4 quarts to fill these things up, and that's exactly what I got in here. Even when filling from the top, it's about 3.8 to 4 quarts. And it's right at the drain plug. There's never a time that I've had where, other than maybe 1 or 2 times, where I've filled these things up from the actual sight hole in the side, that it's come up low. It's always been right there. You stick your camera in there and you can see it's right at the plug, or put like a little what do you call it, mirror up there, and you can see it's even with the plug. So I hope this video helps you guys. Be blessed.